Have you ever felt like something was watching you while you slept, even though you were alone? Have you woken up with your heart racing, not knowing why, as if your soul had been running inside you? Have you felt that your home no longer protects you, that peace has vanished, and you don't know when or how to bring it back? That happened to me, and no, it wasn't stress, nor imagination. It was real. What I'm about to tell you happened recently, in my own house, where I always believed I was safe. Until one night hell knocked on my door. I don't remember exactly when it started. But what I do remember is that feeling, a kind of shadow that walked just behind me every time I turned off the lights. The light bulbs began to flicker for no reason. The mirrors fogged up from the inside, even without moisture, and always at the same time, 3:03 a.m. I thought I was losing my mind. I even laughed at myself the first time I felt that chill on my neck, but on the third night, I knew something had crossed the threshold. Not because I saw it, but because I felt it. I felt I wasn't alone. And that was just the beginning. If you've ever felt something similar, a presence in your home, strange dreams, or a sense that something invisible is affecting you, tell me about it in the comments. I'm reading every story, and sometimes sharing what we've lived through is the first step to reclaiming peace. What's been happening in your life lately? Do you feel something spiritual is touching your reality? Write it below. You're not alone. The night. Everything changed began like any other. I went to bed a little late, left a dim light on in the hallway, and closed my bedroom door as I always did. But that night, there was something different. At exactly 3:03, I opened my eyes for no apparent reason. It wasn't a dream or a noise. It was as if someone had called me from within. The air was thick, heavy, as if the room were full, though I was still alone. I got up carefully, opened the door, and felt a chill that froze me in place. The hallway was dark, but the strange thing was that the light I'd left on was simply gone, not turned off, disappeared. That's when I heard the footsteps. 1, 2, 3. Slowly, coming from the kitchen toward me. I wanted to think it was my mind, that maybe the sound came from outside. But no, it came from within. And with each step, something inside me screamed, "Don't look, don't look." But I did. And there it was, a tall, shadowy figure, black as smoke, motionless by the table. It had no face, no clear shape. It was just there, as if it had been waiting for me for a long time. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I stood frozen. It was then I remembered something my grandmother told me when I was a child. Hell doesn't enter without permission. It only needs a crack. And sometimes fear opens it. And I was full of fear. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on my bed with the bedroom door closed and my back against the wall, waiting for dawn. I didn't know if what I'd seen was real. But the silence that followed was even more disturbing than the presence itself. The next day I walked through the house with a tight chest. Nothing seemed out of place. But when I reached the mirror in the foyer, I noticed something that stopped me cold. There was a word written with fingers in the fog on the glass. It wasn't steam. There was no moisture. There was no one else in the house. The word said, "I entered." It was then I realized this wasn't just a simple apparition. Something had crossed over. Something was inside. I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I went to the basement and opened the old wooden box where my grandmother kept her things. She was a deeply spiritual, believing woman. She said faith was a shield, that every prayer was like a key or a lock. Inside the box, I found rosaries, black and white candles, a worn leather notebook with symbols I didn't recognize. And at the end of the notebook, a loose sheet, a handwritten message in red ink that said, "If darkness crosses the threshold, don't run. Don't scream. Seek this word. Speak it with your soul, not your mouth." And below that warning, only one thing more. A name. One I had never read before. The name was written in thick strokes, almost carved into the paper. Zachariel. I had no idea what it meant, but when I whispered it, I felt something move inside me. It wasn't fear. It was a strange mix of respect and power, as if that word had weight, as if it didn't belong to me. I searched online, in old books I still had, and found fragments. Zachariel, some said, was the angel of judgment, the one who sealed doors opened by human error. Others called him the guardian of the boundary between worlds, a name the ancients spoke only in spiritual emergencies, and I was in an emergency. I spent the whole day feeling like something was following me, flickering lights, shadows slipping by the corner of my eye, my dog barking at empty corners. But the worst came that night. At 3:03, like a cursed clock, the temperature dropped suddenly. The windows fogged up from the inside, and the mirror in the foyer spoke again. This time with a phrase that froze my blood. "I'm behind you." I didn't turn around, I didn't scream, I didn't run. I remembered what the note said, and for the first time in my life I spoke not with my mouth, but with my soul. I turned, slowly, closed my eyes, took a deep breath and said the word firmly, "Bear," believing, though I didn't know exactly in what. "Zachariel, if you're here, it's not a coincidence. Your soul is seeking answers, and if you've ever felt something invisible watching you, if you've ever wanted to close the spiritual doors others opened without your permission, this channel is for you. Here we talk about light, protection, divine signs, and the hidden power you carry within. Subscribe now and walk this spiritual path with me, because when one light is lit, another soul finds its way. In the instant I spoke its name, the atmosphere changed. Not in a spectacular way, not like in the movies. It was something subtler, but much more real. The silence around me shattered like fine crystal. The air, which had weighed like lead on my shoulders, suddenly felt light, and that oppressive feeling, as if someone were breathing on my neck, vanished. But the strangest thing was the sound. A creak, like a rusty door closing, slowly, from some place that didn't belong to this dimension. I heard it. I felt it in my bones. I opened my eyes. There was no one in the hallway. The mirror was clear. The lights were on. In the days that followed, there were no more signs, no more shadows. My dog slept peacefully. I could walk at night without feeling watched, but something inside me had changed. It was as if, by speaking that name, I had touched something sacred. As if I had awakened an invisible shield that not only protected me, but also listened to me. And then I knew. This wasn't just a ritual. It wasn't a magic word. It was a spiritual key, and I had used it. Tell me something. Have you ever felt something dark chasing you, but that at a crucial moment an invisible force protected you? Maybe it was a word, a prayer, a memory of someone no longer here, or perhaps presence you didn't see but that held you up when you were falling. Write it in the comments. I want to read your story. Because sometimes sharing what we've been through is a way to heal and guide others. With the days, my life returned to a kind of normalcy, but it wasn't the same. There was a new calm, yes, but also a sense that something had opened within me. I began to perceive things I once ignored, silences that spoke, lights that flickered, not because of electrical faults, but as if responding to my emotional state, vivid dreams with symbols I'd never seen, and yet felt they belonged to me. In one of those dreams, I saw a circle of fire surrounding me. Inside, a book floated without letters, and from the center came a voice that wasn't a voice, but pierced my soul. It said only one phrase: "You have used the key. Now you must learn to close from within." I woke up with my heart pounding like a drum, and something told me it wasn't just a dream. It was an instruction. I returned to my grandmother's notebook. I reviewed every page, every symbol, every prayer. And there it was, a section I'd never noticed before. There was a drawing of a door with an eye in the center, and beneath it, written in ancient Latin, something I barely managed to translate: "Where a shadow crosses, a flame must rise." I felt a shiver. I had closed a door. But now I understood that it wasn't the only one. There were more, and they all bore my name. Since that night, I could no longer see my house as before. Every corner, every shadow, every crack in the wall seemed to hold a story I still didn't understand. It wasn't paranoia. It was perception. And then I realized what I had closed with the sacred word wasn't just an external door. It was an ancient wound, one that didn't belong to me alone. I remembered that my grandmother always said, "Sometimes we carry the cracks of those who came before, not to suffer them, but to heal them." I began to investigate, to ask my uncles, to review old documents, letters, diaries, and little by little, the truth came to light. My family had been guardians of hidden knowledge, prayers, symbols, sacred names, rites passed down through generations, but silenced by tragedy sealed that knowledge. A fire in my great-grandmother's house that began exactly at 3:03 a.m., without explanation, without survivors, except for one child, my grandmother. And now I understood why she left me that notebook, why she always looked at me with those eyes that knew more than they said. It wasn't a coincidence, it was a calling. From that day, I stopped resisting. I understood I wasn't a victim of a curse, but an heir to a spiritual mission. I cleansed every space in the house with salt and fire. I lit candles in the places where I felt the energy still moved in circles. I recited the prayers from the notebook aloud, though at first I didn't understand their language. The words came out clumsy, but my soul recognized them. And then something happened that shook me. While lighting a candle in the coldest corner of the dining room, the same place where I first saw the figure, the flame took an unusual shape, a bluish spiral that wouldn't go out even as the air hit it. It wasn't ordinary fire, it was a response. I felt a presence, but this time, it wasn't dark. It was ancient, powerful, as if the generations that came before me were finally saying, "Now you know who you are." And deep within me, I felt something break, an invisible chain, a veil that finally fell. I was no longer afraid, because I understood that it's not about fighting darkness with force, but with presence, and I was present. That night, I dreamed again. But it wasn't an ordinary dream. It was a place I had visited before, though I didn't remember it, a dark forest, without stars, where every step I took lit the ground beneath my feet, and at the end of the path, a stone door, covered with symbols identical to those in my grandmother's notebook. I approached with respect. There was no fear, but there was a weight, as if that door had been waiting centuries for someone to return. Above it, carved in fire, was the same word I spoke that night, Zachariel. I realized then that that word wasn't to close something external. It was a key to open what was within. The true door wasn't in my house. It was in me. And by opening it, I had unleashed not only the power to protect, but also the responsibility to guide. When I woke, the world seemed sharper, the sounds deeper, the people more transparent. I could feel who was carrying shadow and who in silence was asking for light. And I knew the time had come, not to hide what I had learned, but to share it. Since then, I've never been the same. My house is no longer just a refuge. It's a silent altar, and I, who once fled from mystery, now walk with it. I'm not chosen because I closed a door. I'm chosen because I heard the call and answered. I don't have all the answers. I still dream of symbols I don't fully understand, but now I know there are words that don't come from this world, and that some souls like mine, and perhaps yours, were marked to remember them. What I've told you isn't just a story. It's a sign. If you're watching this, it's not a coincidence. You also feel something stirring when everyone else is asleep, that the visible world is no longer enough, and that something within you wants to awaken. So listen. You're not crazy, you're not alone, you're not lost, you're remembering. And when hell tries to knock on your door, don't face it with fear. Be silent, breathe, and speak your sacred word. Because if you've made it this far, It's because, like me, you were also born with a key.